So my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it's used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because
Hey, my friends, I am Erica Lukes, and sorry to be a couple minutes late, but you know me in the land of technology, it's just never a dull moment. So, had a few issues with Skype and whatnot, but I'm here now, and I must say that even after a hectic, tiring week, for me just to be here and to relax and to talk about my favorite subject with some of my favorite people in the world is a very cool thing that helps me de-stress and all of that good stuff. So, I want to give a shout out to all my friends in chat, Phil, my favorite troublemaker, Mario, and Bill, and everybody who gets in there and asks thoughtful and intelligent questions, has respect. I appreciate that so much. And someone that caught my eye a while ago, just Steven, who's on my guest tonight, or on my show tonight, I started noticing he got in to the chat every week, and the things that he was saying were incredible. He really had a good base of knowledge, and I really enjoyed the conversations, as hard as it is sometimes for me to try to unmute the mic, do the sound, yada yada, interview guests, and do all of this by myself and try to respond in chat. But I will just say that I was really, really impressed, and so Steve has become a show supporter. I appreciate that, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say tonight, because like I said, he just has a great base of knowledge, and you are the reason I'm here, and I really love hearing from all of you. And so this is going to be cool. Steve first gained an interest in researching ufology and military programs after his own sighting, where he witnessed a large triangular craft 25 years ago. With a focus on history of all of these subjects as emerging technologies, very cool, and freedom of information requests. He lives on the East Coast with his wife, and I am just, Stephen, I'm happy to have you here, because like I said, it's just so cool to see everybody in chat and to see people, like yourself and things. And so thank you for everything. How's it going tonight?
No, thank you. Really, I'm humbled to be on your show. I think that, well, initially, I think that it was probably the researchers that you've had on your show and that you've been showcasing, really good, pragmatic research that first drew me to your show, and then as in ufology today.
You know what? Thank you so much. And finally, we just got your sound on. So, oh Lord. So you might have to just repeat that again, but thank you again. So we just got that out of the way, you guys. How exciting is that? Woo. Okay, now we're not going to have any more glitch. So anyway, thank you again for coming to the show. And just, if you don't mind repeating that. Oh, God.
No problem. It wouldn't be a Friday night without some technical difficulties. But no, thanks for having me on. I'm really humbled to be here. Your show is amazing. I think initially it was the researchers that you've had on and been showcasing, especially in the 2019 and 2020 shows. Really good, pragmatic research and researchers, and through there I found the work that you're doing on Skinwalker Ranch. Just in my humble opinion, I think that your work on Skinwalker is some of the most underappreciated research in ufology today, and with the questions that it raises, I think I know why. That the more people aren't talking about it, and that I'm not really hearing about it on any other outlets or through any other researchers. No, I'm really humbled and excited to be here tonight.
Well, thank you. That really makes me happy to hear, because as you know, you and I have talked about, it can be really an interesting thing, and it can be very isolating sometimes, especially when you're going against the quote unquote grain of ufology. And I know that I've made more than a few people uncomfortable, but again, you know, it's like we should be making some of these people uncomfortable because they're just not playing with the full deck, or they're not giving us factual information. And I mean, you know it because you've commented on it before in chat.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I find the people in the mainstream media that are choosing to actually cover this topic, they're not really doing a very good job, for one. They're omitting a lot of things, a ton of inaccuracies. They come through with retractions all the time. Just really, really shoddy work. And it's really been a mainstay, I think, of ufology, but with it branching out into a little bit more of a mainstream topic, I think we're really seeing firsthand how that can affect the narrative, and it's already being affected from so many sides. I feel like first and foremost for profit. I think that's what drives a lot of what's going on in the community, and a lot of the disinformation and I think the purposeful blurring of facts, and even just simple things such as date times. It's funny, from Rendlesham all the way up until recent events of today, you can really see that from the get-go, there's been, I guess I should say, a real push to cover up even just things such as when events take place. With Rendlesham, the halt memo, right away, he was blurring the lines of when it even took place and misstating the dates. And it's just amazing that anybody's able to do any real good research with the wilderness of lies and smoke and mirrors. And I think more than smoke and mirrors, you find that it's bullshit. Really.
And you can say that on my show now that I'm doing my own thing, and you know, you can just say what you want, which is great. But I think it is, that's been one of the biggest, just the most shocking, well, I mean, there are several shocking things to me that have taken place in my tenure in this subject, but just to see that anybody can get out there and put a document on the internet and say, oh, look at this, I've got a key that's out of place here, but this is an actual declassified document. Or I mean, you've got all of these, or I'm in touch with 10 aliens from Venus, or yada yada yada, and nobody ever bothers to fact check, look at somebody's background, really look into people's backgrounds. And I know, because I have made these mistakes. I will probably continue to do so, but I keep trying to learn from them. But it's just we can't take anybody in this field at face value. It's just hello. I don't know. I don't get it. And I look at, some of the people that are really popular on YouTube and that have been pretty prevalent or prominent in the subject for a long time. And, they're out there talking about, the little Ebens that are, you've got all of these, just complete garbage, just nonsense. And it's either you get to a point where, you believe the narrative that you've put forward, or you're going along with it and you know better, or I don't know, but it is crazy. And you've really, made a great point, and I appreciate that. That's why I really wanted to have you on the show. No,
and honestly, you touched, on a journey. I think for most of us that are here, I think we are here because we had an experience in one way or another, and I'd be glad to talk about mine. But it is a journey, and it's sometimes people can get locked into views or beliefs, and even very intelligent people. It's not hard, and there's certainly real charlatans out there, and people that are claiming to be able to contact these beings and CE5 and all that crap.
I was just thinking about big biceps before you said that. Oh,
but
dear.
the even more shocking to me is to see crazy inaccuracies and disinformation in even what's supposed to be reputable outlets like the New York Times. And that's what really affects the narrative. I think a lot of people can see through the charlatans and the profiteers and the people with a little bit of a crazy message, but when things are put to you in a way that's supposed to be very truthful and believable, and outlets that are supposed to do fact-checking and do good due diligence, and they're either not, or they're purposely maligning the facts. And that's more troublesome to me, because again, people do believe what they read in major media outlets, and people are busy and they can't be, the average person certainly isn't going to do the type of research at the level I think that's required to really find out what's going on in these things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is difficult. You really, again, when you're, judging a source, a media source, look at, obviously there are incredible journalists. I'm so lucky to know some of them that have been pushing the boundaries and are very respectable for a long time. But they're at the end of the day, it's like, who owns the company? Who's funding this? Who's doing that? You always have to dig deeper, especially these days. And I read the New York Times. I've always read it, but that I will say that now, looking back a few years later at that story, that at first I was thinking, okay, this is so cool. This is going to give the subject validity. And yes, and it did, push things out there a little bit, and people that I had no interest in UFOs, which is 95% of the people that I interact with on a daily basis. They're like, oh yeah, we saw that on the news. That's so cool. But, it's like, still, it's like, what is the agenda? What was the reason? Who are the people that were putting the article forward, and what have their motivations been over the years, and what are they now?
Yeah, that's so true. And again, a lot of these things, I think time is probably the biggest gift for researchers, although it's not the way we want it, but definitely the gift of time, I think, allows us to see things the way that they are, I think, a little more in the correct light, especially through things like FOIA and stuff. There's a lot of great researchers, obviously John Greenwald and Paul Dean, that are doing great FOIA work. And it's a shame when you hear people putting that work down. And I'm not saying that government documents are the end all be all and that they need to be 100% believed. Certainly a healthy level of skepticism and everything, but I think that they're about as real as you can get to getting a good picture as to what's going on. Certainly individuals within government can do nefarious things, but when we speak of the government, it's a vast array of 2 million people in 2,000 different agencies with all kinds of different agendas and budgets and political beliefs and what have you. So I think overall, I think that FOIAs are great because they really do, the water finds its level, so to speak, when the work isn't dependent, or should I say the facts aren't dependent on an individual, but are spread out and are repeatedly backed up by various documents and individuals and emails and whatnot. So I think that kind of works great. But also, that stuff's good, I think, for people who have a bit more of a skeptical mindset and maybe a little bit broader of a stance. But like you said, this is a journey. And I know for me, when I had an experience 25 years ago, the information was very sparse, and what you got was just stuff that today it's amazing that people even gave it the time of day, to be honest with you. But it is a journey, and beliefs that you develop even as a very smart and scientific person, even, you know, being intelligent, you can it might be harder to give up some of those things that you believe to be true. Right. It is a journey, and honestly, that's why I think work like yours on the Skinwalker Ranch is so important, because that's the kind of work that I think can truly get people to open their minds and their eyes and take a little bit of a different look at something. And you know, it is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and certainly a stepping stone. I think Skinwalker Ranch is a great starting point. Really, I do.
Yeah,
such amazing.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, honestly, you say that, and it's an important lesson for everyone to see and to learn.
No, and I hope maybe later on towards the end of the show, I'd love to ask a few questions about this. I know you often have other people on and showcase them and their work, and for those of us that listen every week, we definitely have questions about Skinwalker, and I hope that we can maybe get into that, even just for a few. But, you know, a point that I want to make is that, you know, these mainstream, you know, YouTube outlets and whatnot, and, you know, the Debrief is a new one. That's a new up-and-coming one, and they have these, you know, great articles. I'll be honest, they're written very well, and they have great videos online. But you know, if you look at their views, you know, your videos on YouTube get routinely, you know, 4 times as many views as their, sometimes many more times than that. And I think that says something about real research, you know. And maybe that's a hopeful message, you know.
Well, that's great. I mean, I will say that their website is beautiful, and there's been a lot of work and some money put into that, which is great. Everybody needs that to have a nice, you know, all of that. But, you know, I want to go back to, I mean, we will talk about your sighting and you know, what you're growing up and different things, because I really wanted to learn more about you. But go back to what you think was taking place with the New York Times article.
Yeah. Well, even just to start with the people that wrote the article, you know, most people, they read the New York Times and they assume what they're reading is very well-sourced, and due diligence has gone through it. And most of the times it has, obviously. It's a very large outlet, and they've stood the test of time, and they often do their due diligence, and sometimes you just can't plan for things or you don't know things. But certainly the articles were written by people that specifically only do paranormal such type articles for the New York Times, and that doesn't mean anything. But more importantly, I think, is the timing of the articles, and the timing of when these videos came out obviously lined up perfectly with the coming out of TTSA, To the Stars Academy, and the videos that were attached to the New York Times article, that the New York Times article was really about, of course, were released to the world through TTSA. And I just think that alone goes to show the high level of sophistication that's behind the type of UFO information that's getting out there today. You know, it's not just the crazy stories of abductions or being able to speak with your mind to aliens. You know, it's really, you know, government-sourced information being disseminated, you know, through a very reputable news source. And I think first and foremost, the thing that needs to be remembered is that TTSA did these things very, very well. And, you know, it was a business adventure. First and foremost, their sole purpose, well, their number one purpose, at least, is to produce returns and for their stockholders, profit. That's their first goal. And they're now saying that they're an entertainment company, and we're seeing them evolve or devolve into something else. But they really always have been an entertainment company. I mean, if you look at what the company consists of, the type of people that were brought on board from the government, a lot of these people had just recently left government, retired. Again, 2017, timing's everything. And it's funny, I don't really ever hear politics talked about a lot in the ufology or the UFO community, and that's good. It's really actually refreshing because there's such an oversaturation of politics in everything today. But certainly we need to at least keep in mind, just for the time frame of things that are going on, 2017 was Trump's first year, not even, we're just talking about the very first month actually of his presidency, pardon me. And these people were leaving government, and they were going to join a private company. Now, 2 months before these videos in the New York Times article came out, TTSA offered $50 million worth of shareholder stock. I mean, they only sold, I believe, $1 million worth. But their goal from the get-go was to create money, to generate profit. A lot of these people that joined the company left. I'm not going to say government on bad terms, because as you see, many of them are going back to government this year, now that the old administration is out and a new one is in. But they're certainly left over various things that they were not happy about, big or small. And they went on to do something in the meantime that could generate profit in the private sector with the knowledge that they had from their vast experiences in government and intelligence. And that's done all the time. I'm not saying it's nefarious, but certainly all these things need to be understood when we're talking about these videos and the New York Times article. And a lot of these things are very important. And a lot of things have come out in years since that have given us, I think, a much more clearer picture of what's going on. But there are still many, many questions. And Sometimes I think truth is stranger than fiction.
You are not kidding about that one. I mean, it's definitely it is interesting. And I remember I was I think it was that same year, actually, 2017. Oh gosh, yeah. And actually, the article had come out. TTSA had been formed, and just all sorts of different things were taking place. And I was talking to people like Ted Rowe, who's the executive director of NARCAP, and different people, and they, he was very leery of what was taking place and didn't really see anything coming out of it. And of course, there were lots of promises that they were developing new apps, and there have been different people that have said that they're really, one of their concerns is buying up different databases, much like Bigelow did, back in the day, and different things. And so to what end, what is really going on behind the scenes. But as we know, like you mentioned, there are just so many smoke screens that it's sometimes hard to see things. I mean, you take things at face value, and I mean, I don't think you can take anything that those people say at face value, but it's my own opinion.
No, certainly not. And I mean, not just for purposes of rooting out nefariousness, but just if you're trying to get a real true picture of what's going on, you have to understand that you're dealing with issues of, national security and emerging technologies and all kinds of things that require that us, or as average citizens and taxpayers, can't be privy to, or simply for national security reasons. So I think there's all kinds of reasons to have healthy skepticism, and certainly in the mainstream ufology, you see a real lack of that, and that's really a shame. And I know that that's purposeful and exploited for all kinds of reasons. But truly the mixing of facts purposefully and the blurring of backstories is something to be concerned about. You know, again, when it comes from big mainstream outlets, it can do damage, and it can really do harm. And I think that the ufology community has a hard enough battle as it is, just getting real good, solid work done. And you know, that you touched on, you know, just things like MUFON and selling their data for a very, you know, really just pennies, and essentially they got gutted in the process. And I don't know if that was the goal from the beginning, but it certainly was done well, and was done in ways that we've seen in military operations all throughout the world on a very small scale. It was done to MUFON, and it was done very well. And it's a shame because there really is a challenge to getting good information in this community and getting good research done. And even, unfortunately, the most documented cases with the best information that we have comes from cases that directly involve the military. And unfortunately, the vast information that consists in these cases can often be very wrong. I mean, look at the Rendlesham case. Just think about the story that we understood it to be for the first 15 or 20 years, and then the story that it's being told as today. Very, very different, especially as far as, you know, military operations going on that night, and technologies that could have been being used. Obviously, John Burroughs just released a new book this past year touching on, you know, weaponizations of new technologies and UAP. And certainly this is a very far cry from the story that millions and millions of people still know the story today as, which they saw it on, you know, most of us, Unsolved Mysteries probably the first time. And the story is very, very different from what it was presented as that night. And that was purposefully done from the very first part, not just with the production of shows like that, but even just with the recording and documentation of whatever went on those nights there at Rendlesham. From the very get-go, the facts have been blurred, and certainly interests of national security require secrecy. But I think that there becomes a point, you know, time after time, again and again, when a narrative is drawn out that's so far from what reality may possibly be. And again, I don't know, but I think something can be said for people, especially large amounts of people, accepting for fact things that are not, and then developing beliefs on those. And I think right now you're seeing a point where many people, at least half, I would say, of people in America today would think that aliens probably exist somewhere, that there is life somewhere in the universe. And a large portion of them probably believe that they've visited here. I mean, they've seen it for 15 years on Ancient Aliens on the History Channel. People presenting evidence and scientific fact, as they call it. And it's very convincing, especially for intelligent people, because that's really going to be the type of people that are watching something like that. And for entertainment purposes or for national security, I can understand. But when you start getting to the point that there's a real question as to what reality is, I think that that's kind of dangerous, you know. And I don't know how much longer, you know, the fence sitting can go on. You know, we've been doing it for 70 years now. We've debated whether or not what we're seeing in the sky is military technology or if it's something from another world or dimension. And we're still really no closer to the truth, and certainly not to the existence of anything outside of this world. We have no real proof any more than we did 70 years ago that they're visiting this world from anywhere else. Now, how much longer are we going to do that for? Another 70 years? At that point, we'll have wondered for 150, and if the government knows, they've been covering it up the whole time, and thousands of people at that point have known and presented no real evidence. And I just don't know that could be possible.
Right.
So I'd like to think that we're heading in a direction that at least I think technology may be starting to get to a point where people are more open to the aspect and possibility that this could be technology that's made here on Earth and has been perfected for a very long time. You know, when you were doing the show about Socorro a couple weeks ago, you know, I had brought up the point about the Harrier jet. And again, Socorro happened in 1964, and we could get into that, but certainly the technology that's on the Harrier jet, the vertical takeoff and landing technology, the Harrier jet flew in 1967, so certainly the technology was being worked on far before that. And in fact, the very first jet that had vertical takeoff and landing ability, that is, it can take off without a runway, you know, just lift up straight with jet power and then take off. The first jet to do that actually did it in the early 50s. So technology, I think, has developed a lot sooner and a lot further than most people probably give it credit for.
Absolutely. I mean, and I absolutely agree. And that's something, you know, again, as you've heard week after week, my whole thought process shifting with the more information that I'm, you know, looking at and things. And I definitely feel that, you know, I mean, Donald Kehoe and NICAP and some of these, you know, organizations and things that they, and not everybody that worked there. I mean, I think that there were just people, perhaps top level positions or things that were, you know, in charge of disseminating information that was not, I mean, where did the extraterrestrial hypothesis get inserted into the narrative? Well, let's look at Kehoe, and then there you have it. And you have all of these advancements in technologies and different things taking place. You know, we're trying to beat the Russians at that, the Chinese at that, and just all sorts of things. And so it's just a real interesting thing. And I think, I know that we all, you know, want to believe. I mean, I've had experiences that I can't explain. And at this point, I'm not going to ask anybody what their opinion is. I will hold those are my experiences, and I don't need somebody to, you know, validate them anymore. But I, you know, definitely feel that what we've been told and fed for a long, long time is just simply not the truth, and we have to be really careful.
Yes, no, very, very well put. Very well put. I certainly agree. And no, that's a great point. Where did the alien hypothesis even come from? That's such a great point. And you know, again, it was inserted purposely. And it's funny because you see, again, things change, but they stay the same. You talk about Donald Kehoe and people, you know, playing both sides of the fence. Essentially, I think we could admit today, as far as, you know, the government and the ufology community, and we have proof that that's happened. You know, with Rick Doty is a great example of direct involvement in the government in disseminating a false narrative that really blurred the lines of reality for someone and probably had a hand in their mental breakdown. Again, you know, I haven't investigated that myself, but I think the facts probably support that his mental breakdown was precipitated from a constant campaign of disinformation that was approved and carried out by government employees. And even a little more on the periphery, people like Robert Bigelow. He's involved in the ufology community for decades, and the real sum of his involvement, I would say, is questionable. these people that claim to be sitting on both sides of the fence, working at high levels of government and intelligence, and then claiming to be trying to further truth in the UFO community. I'm not saying that there aren't people that exist who fit that category, but I think that
I'm just saying.
I think that in evidence shows that most of them turn out to not be that case. Again, just more of the uphill battle of ufology, and why good researchers are really so important. People like you and the work that you've done on Skinwalker Ranch, and people like John Greenwald that are, hammering away at FOIAs for 25 years, and Barry Greenwood and Phil Leach and Gary Potter and Jan Aldrich, and just people that are really toughing it out and seeing, what they can find year after year, despite all the noise and the nonsense, and obviously they get involved in the happenings of the day, but their research is really it's so valuable to people that are trying to really try and get a handle on what's going on outside of whatever beliefs or hopes that we may have. I mean, I'm a human being. I have all kinds of dreams and hopes and things that I think would be really, really interesting. But the point for me is to find out, I had an experience. I saw something that I'm told does not exist. And I saw it 25 years ago, and I'm not seeing anything in technology today that's competing or even mirroring what I saw that day. And that gives me pause. So either it really is something from another world or dimension, or, people here on Earth have really done some amazing technological advancements. And it's amazing just to think that has been under wraps and hidden for as long as it has. And again, I think that we're starting to see that, again, water does find its level eventually, and technology does advance. But it's funny, if you look, even if at our military today, there's a lot of amazing things that are going on, and I'd love to talk about emerging technologies. Yeah. But if you look at it at a quick glance, I mean, it looks much the way it did during World War II. The Navy kind of looks the same. The Air Force kind of looks the same. We don't, to think that 70 years ago, the advancements that you would have thought would have been made on a massive scale. Just to think about the advancements that happened in the first 60 years of the 20th century, 70 years. It's amazing that in that same time frame that we haven't just gone leaps and bounds. And I imagine that we have, and because we've essentially been in a Cold War ever since the end of World War II, the illusion is that things are the same and the games are being played on all kinds of levels. But certainly those of us that have seen things know that one of two things is true. It's either ours or it's not.
Right. Well, let's go back to, and I love everything that you're saying. I knew that you would be such a wonderful addition to the lineup. So thank you for being here and saying everything. But let's go back to your sighting 25 years ago and tell us more about that.
Sure. It's funny. I've actually just started talking about it. Really, in the last 5 years or so. It happened in the mid-'90s. The first person I told was my wife, and I've since told a few people about it, but just in my immediate family. So let me go ahead and do that. Just bear with me, because it's not really a story that I've told many times. But I would love to share it.
I appreciate you doing that. I mean, don't feel pressured. I know it's a personal thing.
Not at all. It happened back in 1997. I'm not really sure when, but I'd say the spring. And I was young. I was 11 going on 12. And I lived in a moderately, populated area. Figure your average neighborhood that you see on TV, the Wonder Years or whatever. And it was just after dark, probably 9 o'clock or so. I don't know. Probably earlier than that even. Anyway, and I'd run outside to grab something from the yard. And as I was walking back towards the house, I think I had heard it first. It was a very, very low hum. And as I turned around, to my utter shock, I saw floating not 75 feet from the ground, probably about 60 feet higher than the trees. So yeah, I'd say about 75 or 80 feet off the ground was a massive black triangle, the typical kind that you hear about all the time, like the Belgian UFO sightings. And it was very massive, and it was barely moving. It was about 300 feet per side. You know, and I since have gone back to the location. I've moved since, but I've gone back to the location many times to kind of look at the layout and get a good idea of just how big it was again, because I was young when this happened, but I've thought about it probably every week ever since. But it was the typical black triangle that you see now. I didn't see any lights or anything on the bottom of it. You often hear of, lights at the corners of these things. But it was, like I said, it was about 300 feet per side, and it was moving very slow. It was moving at a walking pace, like you would walk down the sidewalk. Extremely slow. 300 feet per side, probably about 40 feet high. And the first thing that just amazed me is that something could just hang in the air the way that it was. Really not making a single sound except for a low hum. And the only light that I saw, and it's funny because this light has been really the thing that I kind of think back on the most when I think of my sighting, because again, I'm on a very personal journey, I think, to understand exactly what I saw in the mid-90s that night. And the only light that I saw on the craft was in the corner, not on the bottom, but on the side of the craft towards the back corner was a red light. And it wasn't like an otherworldly type of light. It was just a red light like you see like on a light bulb on an airplane. They tend to blink, the red blinking lights on an airplane. However, this was just on. It wasn't blinking. It was just in the steady on position. And it was very much the type of light that you would expect to see anywhere on Earth, just a red light bulb. And I've that has certainly played into what I think I was seeing that day. But I watched this craft for about 8 seconds. And at that point, I ran into the house to get a flashlight. Being a 12-year-old kid, I was going to signal this thing, and I wasn't going. I wasn't gone 10 minutes, Erica. Or excuse me, I wasn't gone 10 seconds. And when I came out, it was gone. It was no longer there. And certainly at the pace that it was moving, I should have been able to see it within my line of sight for at least 2 minutes. But it was gone. And kind of a post story to that. The very next day, I was in school. Again, I didn't tell anybody about this. I didn't go into the house and tell anyone. And certainly being a child in the mid-90s, I had heard of UFOs. And I certainly had seen Unsolved Mysteries, so I certainly had heard of triangle UFOs. But I was certainly in some shock and knew that most people were ridiculed for such things. So I didn't tell anybody that day and kind of sat on it. But the next day I went into school, and I distinctly remember during recess, there was a kid, and he had about 4 people standing around him, and he lived about 5 miles from me in the next town over. And he was telling people basically the same thing that I had seen. He was telling these kids that he had seen it, and they were not receptive. They certainly did not believe him. And I almost went over to talk to him and say, hey, I saw it too, but I saw what was going on and said, I think I'll keep this to myself. And I certainly did for a number of years. And it wasn't until my early adulthood that I really started looking for good information on what I saw, because like I said before that, everything was just, it was too Hollywood, too alien. I couldn't really get access to good information. The books were very wanting, I would say. But that was my experience, kind of mild as far as the sighting goes, but certainly it had an effect on me. Again, I don't think there's been a week that's gone by that I haven't thought about that event and had real curious questions. And again, if the narrative at the time or since was that some technology exists and, we can't tell you what it is and blah, 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 that would be one thing. But, for a lot of us who have had this experience for a very long time, the narrative has been that, these things don't exist. And that's just not an acceptable answer for most of us, and nor should that be.
Wow, and I mean your very vivid description of your sighting just brought back a few different memories. One personal, and then I had when I was MUFON state director, I had somebody reach out to me, and he met me. I mean, he was very concerned. He was very nervous. He comes from a kind of a prominent family in these parts, and he had a friend that had witnessed something out by Utah Lake, which is a lake where we've had all sorts of interesting sightings over the years, decades. And as I look back on things now, I have to think that is probably our technology that we're testing. But he, he showed me the pictures that his friend had taken, and there was a triangular craft that appeared over her, and it, according to him, frightened her a great deal, and was just very reluctant to talk about it and things. And he was, I mean, genuinely, I believe, was very concerned about it and showing me things. And I, it was a very interesting experience. And I tried to get him to come forward and talk a little bit more and do some things, but he just dropped off. But, and then, while you're telling me this story, I've got a handful of periodicals on my table here, and I just thumbed through a couple of them, and one of them is the International UFO Reporter from May, June of 94, and the cover is Flight of the Triangle, Lethbridge, Alberta, August 11th, 1993. And then you turn and read the article, and there are different witness accounts of the same types of craft that you appear to be describing. So, very interesting. Did you, when you had your sighting, did you do, and I mean, I'm sure it's because it sounds like you've really done your due diligence, but what other types of similar sightings occurred in the area other than the one you just described?
Unfortunately, I have, and that's, I'm sure going, no doubt, unless I one day find the answer, will be an ongoing pursuit for me. But up until this moment, I have not found any other information, any other sightings, any other reports, anything else to link to that night. Unfortunately.
So if we're to, we'll put this out there to people that are listening. I mean, if anybody has any information about sightings that are similar in this area, and you want to contact either of us, that would be great. Where specifically can you tell us? Give us a little bit more information about that so we can throw it out there.
Sure. This would have been over the Cape May County, New Jersey area in mid-March of 1997.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. You just never know. It's interesting, and I have to say that it's yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I would absolutely be. It would be wonderful to hear if anybody else has any information pertaining to anything seen around that area or even nearby at that time. And of course, they can get in touch with you, or they can contact me through. They can email me at UAP or SAP@gmail.com. But yeah, that would be great. And hopefully in the future, I do have a couple requests that I'm preparing now that may give me a little bit more of an insight into that. But no, it's been it's a very sparsely populated area, really. But the funny thing is that the spot that it passed me at was about 400 yards from a road that's very frequently trafficked at that time, and it was going in that direction. Now, again, I didn't see it leave, but if I assume that it carried on the direction that it did, just 400 yards away would have been a main road that certainly I would assume 10 to 12 cars would have been on at the time, that would have had a line of sight at least to this thing passing over top less than 100 feet from the ground. Yeah.
Wow. And what similarities, and I'm thinking about like the Phoenix Lights case.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's great. I was just going to say that. I was just going to touch on the Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix, it's funny because at least in my experience, searching for information on the Phoenix Lights has actually been kind of tough. Even if you're just trying to do Google searches, you really you don't come up with a whole lot, and you come up with a lot of the same stuff. But it's I think unique in my mind because unlike most of the well-known sightings, and we've touched on them, Skinwalker, Rendlesham, the ones that we know the most and have the most information on, unlike those, this does not involve the military, and it involves thousands of people reportedly seeing essentially the same thing. Now, again, there's variations in the reports, but anybody, I think, will tell you that when you have mass sightings, that reports are always going to vary. In fact, that's exactly why we don't allow witness testimony to strictly convict people in a court of law, because it is unreliable. But certainly when you have that big of a massive sighting, the opportunity, I think, to do some good research is certainly there. And it's certainly something that I would like to look more into, specifically because of the timing of the sightings and the similarity to what I saw, but also just because it's just you feel like there would have to be more there, and certainly again, right from the beginning. Even city council, they very quickly did not want to talk about anything or even really just touch on the subject, even just to say there was some type of military training. And in fact, the Air Force said there was no aircraft in the air that night. And that was their first response. I believe in the days following, they said that there had been an aircraft that had released flares some distance away, and that they had drifted essentially across Arizona in a perfect V formation for hours. But certainly with a massive amount of people seeing this, and there's some pretty convincing photographic evidence, at least for that time. And the sightings we're seeing, not just in Phoenix, of course, but over a good swath of area. I think that there's a lot to be researched there. I wish I lived in Arizona. I would go check it out.
Yeah, I like Arizona, actually. It is an interesting case. And I just have to say that, now that I'm thinking about it, okay, so you've got this huge craft that's flying over, hundreds of people, and where's the military? Who's supposed to be defending us from, from any threat, which I would assume if there was some sort of, craft like that, that would be considered perhaps a potential threat, but I don't know. I mean, clearly, according to people at TTSA, these are a threat, so I don't know.
Well, yeah, and that's the threat thing is. It is funny because it really does. They purposely are inserting the threat narrative in there, and I know we're coming up on a break soon, so I'll hold off on going into that. But I certainly would love to when we get back and touch a little more on TTSA and as far as that goes.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. I think that's really important, and I can't believe the time has just flown by so far for the first portion of the show. That's amazing. I'm really excited to have you here. And like I just want to to thank you for, again, supporting me, for giving me props, and I really, that means the world to me, because sometimes it can be a really interesting field, especially when you're going against the current, or whatever we've got going on out there, which remains to be determined.
And there's something to be said for people like you and those other great researchers that I named that do keep going at it, because, I think essentially a lot of us get into this because we do have real questions and real things that we want to find answers to. And essentially, you do find some answers, and it may change things for you, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to change things for the narrative. And it takes a lot to continue to go up against that, day after day, year after year. And a lot of researchers, have moved on, and a lot of great researchers. And there's nothing there to be said for shame in that, because unfortunately, a lot of great researchers do great work, like I said, but it doesn't seem to affect the narrative. And what are you going to do? Are you going to spend the next 20 years convincing people with all your great evidence that Bob Lazar is a fraud, or are you going to move on with your life? And
Well, I mean, that's a great point right there. It's no accounting for looking at evidence, which, yes, Bob Lazar is a fraud. It's okay. But, I mean, that, whatever, there's a lot to that, and people just don't want to look at the evidence, and that's, I don't know. But, and it does get frustrating, and you're right, and I think it, but it's also just so interesting. I mean, there's so much to this, and it's not just looking at UFO cases. It's looking at people and their belief systems and religion and politics and all of these things that have a way that have crept in to the subject. And it's I don't know. I'm addicted to it. What can I say? Clearly.
Oh, I mean, it's because it's possibly the greatest story still never told, right? And honestly, for me, that goes both ways. Whether aliens or interdimensional beings do exist and they're coming here, that's amazing, and it leaves for all kinds of abilities. Or if they're not, if we really are the only intelligent life in the universe, again, the possibilities are equally endless, I feel like. And I think that hope is to be found on both sides of the coin.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I just was thinking, and we're going to go to break here in a second, but I'm just thinking, if there are advanced civilizations visiting the Earth, who in the world is going to reach out to them? And what sort of process do we have for that? We're just going to blow them out of the sky because they're a threat? I mean, have there been has there been any discussion of people creating alliances to communicate with their space being brothers, whatever? I mean, I don't know. There's so many interesting questions, and we can get into that a little bit after the break. And just Phil wanted me to ask you again what your email was.
Oh, yes. UAP or SAP @gmail.com.
Sweet. Okay, cool. Well, Phil's going to be messaging you. And I thank you, Steve, for being here. And we're going to take a break. And I just want to thank everybody for your supporting the show. You can go to UFOclassified.com or find me on Patreon to help keep the show on the air and the research going and different things. You know that this is a labor of love for me, and I couldn't do this without all of you. So thank you very much for everything you do. We will take a break, and I have a feeling the best is yet to come. We will be back after that. Lord. Oh, welcome back to UFO Classified. I'm your host, Erica Lukes. Always a pleasure to be here every Friday with my people and talking about interesting things, trying to weed through some of dysfunction, misinformation, disinformation, all of the good stuff. And at the end of the day, we're just simply trying to empower ourselves. So that's why I keep doing it. I'm here tonight with Steve, who is in, if you guys get into chat, and I really encourage you, if you can, to get into chat every weekend, because I have people like Steve that, you're there, you are asking intelligent questions, and I was just so excited to have you on the show because of everything that you've asked. And so thank you for being here.
No, thank you again. Really, I'm so humbled to be here and to be able to come on and talk to you. And really, again, I can't understate how important I think your work is. And I just think that it's a travesty that it's not being talked about more in the community. And again, with the questions that it raises, I think I know why.
Why do you think that is?
Well, unfortunately, you're bucking the narrative that has been so carefully and very well established. The Skinwalker narrative goes back to the 90s, right? 25 years, and the book that was written, and the legend that was capitalized on, and it has certainly been very profitable for some people and useful for some people, and that narrative, you're certainly bringing up lots of great research and great points that questions the nature of that narrative and what people are being told, and it's really, like I said, it's the kind of work that I think can really help people and help them to, open their heart and their mind and just be a little more open-minded about things that we've all maybe taken to be true, that just may not be the truth that we think that it is, or on the level of truth that we've believed it has been.
Well, and thank you again for the kind comments. I mean, it's been such a process, for me, as I've talked about pretty much every week, because, I'm from Utah. I live 2 hours away. I've interviewed people for years that live near there and that have, just had experiences, and it is really interesting to see how, that book manipulated a whole community of people and the world. And again, it's the same people that are promoting kind of that narrative decade after decade that have made money off of it, and that have also come out with other things, other top secret documents or other groundbreaking stories. And you mentioned Lazar, and I don't know what else to say.
No, it's so true. And I think that's what makes it all the more heartbreaking, I guess, when good researchers are often, overlooked, and they're very hard to find. And more importantly, good information is hard to find for those of us that are really just seeking only that. And, it's a shame because here you are every week, and you present amazing researchers, and you've done amazing work on Skinwalker Ranch that no one's talking about. But yet you have obscure Harvard scientists going on, every major web talk show talking about rocks that are UFOs. And
well, as you say, timing's everything, isn't it?
Yes, and funding is everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and game playing is everything, and yeah, the politics is everything. I mean, unfortunately, that as I've seen in this subject, you can't. I mean, politics is when you. Well, no comment. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole tonight. Dang it. Okay. But
it is refreshing that politics is so void from the UFO community and from ufology in general. It really is refreshing, but it's important to keep those things in mind when you're trying to get a true view of facts, and most especially history and the history of some of these areas, and even just recent histories. And again, the Tic Tac Nimitz incidents, and we're seeing, just like Rendlesham, a morphing of that story as well, and a very purposeful narrative that's being pushed through almost exclusively military involvees. And I just urge people to be skeptical about those things, because we've seen through time how those exact situations can often turn out to be very far from what we're thinking that they are.
And
at the time.
What are your thoughts about that? You mentioned the emerging technologies, that you have an area of interest in that. And so tell us a little bit about that and what you think the potential could be, that perhaps some of those things that were released to the public were perhaps, I don't know, emerging technologies?
Sure. And I'd love to get your opinion too on some things later on tonight. It's a rare experience for me to have a direct access to you. But personally, I find it suspicious, to say the least, from the get-go, the area that the Tic Tac Nimitz experience even happened at. We're talking about some of the most surveilled and protected area in the world. It didn't just happen over the ocean when a ship was out there. They were in a protected area of the ocean where they often test new technologies and have, war games. And it was during a 2-week-long training mission in this area that the event happened. And it wasn't just a single event. In fact, it happened over the course of 10 days. I believe they had radar reports of many multiples of these anomalies. Sorry, I'm just getting a note out here. But so certainly the area from the get-go leaves a little bit to be questioned, I think. The video footage itself, we really certainly don't know what we're looking at, but it's not convincing evidence of anything to me, except for a very poor capture of an infrared camera.
What do you think of
I'm sorry. Yeah, as far as emerging technologies, and we can get back to the Tic Tac incident and talk about discrepancies that have happened over the years, and even, the questions that arise from just, how these videos came to be in the public sector to begin with.
Let's talk about that one for a second, because that's a good one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
So tell us what you know about that.
Well, and again, John Greenwald's done, I think, really great research into this, and has done some great FOIA stuff, and is really, I think, given us probably the clearest picture as to what's going on. As far as how the videos got released in Lou Elizondo, and he did have a segment, in fact, that even highlighted internal emails from Lou Elizondo and the Dobser and the Pentagon. Dobser being the people who declassify, so to speak, things to be released for FOIA and declassify documents. But certainly Elizondo, I think misrepresented possibly what he was even getting these videos for. And I think that it's fair to say that these documents weren't, although they were released officially and they were declassified through the proper channels, I think that there was some fuzzying of exactly what they were being released for, and certainly they were not being looked at as highly classified UFO films that somehow Lou Elizondo was able to smuggle out of the government with the few strikes of a pen. He was able to get the videos cleared for release, essentially, in August of 2017. He then joined TTSA, and a month later they offered $50 million worth of stock in the company. And then just a couple months later, they officially released the videos, of course, after a very, very good media blitz that was planned beforehand. But the videos themselves certainly really don't show anything. And in fact, there's not a lot of data in the films, which allegedly makes them unclassified because there is no location or data in those files. So he really didn't have to go through a lengthy process of getting them declassified to the point that they would have been if they were some very secretive videos of something. The threat, you had brought up earlier, the threat issue. And it's funny because when Lou Elizondo was getting these videos released, he was representing them as essentially drones or UAVs that could pose a threat to Department of Defense traffic or structures. And he was getting these released to form some type of database for stakeholders and, various representatives of agencies and companies, so that they could use this database for, furtherment of whatever they're doing. And it certainly wasn't being declassified in a way that made it seem, should I say it was released in a way that certainly makes it look like it's a very harmless piece of video. And I think that when they were released, I think that the administration at the time was probably taken aback a little bit. I think they were kind of sideswiped a little bit. And but when they did their research and they realized that Lou Elizondo filed the paperwork and got these released and is kind of putting them on the world stage, saying that they're, he's not saying that they're UFOs that are out of this world, but he's saying it without saying it, the typical toe in the water, toe out of the water kind of thing. And I certainly wouldn't have expected the military to come out right away and say what these things are, whether they are simply a bad infrared capture of the tailpipe of a jet, or if they're an actual alien space vehicle that they captured. I wouldn't expect the government to come out and say it either way because they didn't release the documents, and I don't think they were going to dignify Lou Elizondo or TTSA with an immediate response. But it's funny because the videos themselves, a lot of people don't even really have an understanding of what they're looking at because, why would you? The New York Times doesn't really go into a very deep detail of it exactly, nor did many mainstream media outlets that did quick 2 or even 5-minute segments on what was going on. They kind of wanted to talk about the, sexier, more non-technical things of UFOs and aliens. But
sorry. Yeah, I know. Well,
certainly.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, and I just have to. Yeah, you're right. No, keep going on that thought because you're going.
Sure.
I like it.
And I think it's important to recognize that. I think that was done very well. They're presenting these videos as if they're videos, and people just assume that they were captured by very good cameras that got the best view of what they could get, and were kind of being shown something that's truly mystifying to people within the government. And I think more importantly, it was. I think these videos were to give credence to these sightings, and certainly they're the video that at least was attached to the Nimitz event. Again, that's kind of been mixed in. I think a lot of people are under the impression that that camera footage was captured by, David Fravor. And, the videos themselves, in fact, they've been altered. When they were released, they were in a different format, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the note for that, but John Greenwald gets into it very well. I really suggest that people check out John Greenwald's breakdown of the Lou Elizondo emails, because he really shows some really convincing evidence that at least we need to question the narrative that's been sold about the videos and about the entire encounter. It's funny because the Nimitz encounter is one of the most popular and most famous encounters at this point, but a lot of the things that have been shown through the mainstream media, again, are very inaccurate, and there's been a lot of retractions, but of course they don't really get the news, and they don't get the type of front page display that the initial story got. Even there's a very famous video floating around online. In fact, I believe you shared it. It's the half-hour video of the Nimitz encounter, and this is a documentary that includes the radar operators that were there, and
that's Dave Beatty's,
yeah, and people that were very, very closely connected, and even that video has since been edited to edit some of the parts out. There's a part there, where they're talking about how the Tic Tac had went from 28,000 feet to below sea level, and that it was shown on radar and sonar as doing that and going below sea level, and that it traveled at 500 knots underwater. If you watch the updated version of that video, that's all been cut out, and there's a very vague explanation as to why. But if you look at the encounters closely, I think if you believe that this is technology that's being tested at a government test site where technology is often tested and war games are played, and it seems that there is an underwater element going on to these sightings. And again, there's, to my knowledge, there's only a couple people that actually said they saw a Tic Tac that day. Again, all military witnesses. The rest of what we know of the encounter happened on radar. And again, there was problems, not problems, but issues with them seeing vast fleets of these types of Tic Tac UAPs over a course of 10 days while they were out there. And it's just interesting. It seems to me, if I guess I get down to brass tacks, it seems to me that they're testing a technology that certainly is, radar defeating first and foremost, and they're using various elements to do so. And there may actually be some very fast Tic Tac vehicles that I don't know, but it seems like at least that they're being operated in conjunction with underwater vehicles or submarines. And it's funny that part has been cut out. Again, something that's very technical has been removed from the story, and we're just supposed to go on and move on and not pay attention to that. And that's just one element of the story that's been changed or has been incorrect over time that we're just supposed to move on with. And I think it's just important to pay attention to those things. And certainly, at least there's been a couple articles out just in the past year, Forbes most prominently, who have talked about emerging technologies, and specifically including technologies that are laser-based, I guess, and essentially these are for jets, and it's to defeat missiles, that are locked on or strafing at these jets. Currently, the jets often deploy flares, which pick the heat signature of the missiles, pick up the flare, which is hotter than the engine of the jet, and they engage the flare instead of the jet. But there's new emerging technology, like I said, that Forbes has done a great article about this year. And the jets, according to this, patent and article, the jets have lasers which can ionize the atmosphere of a distance away from the jet. I believe they said 300 to 1,000 meters away from the jet in front of it, and it can ionize the air and essentially create a floating plasma ball. And the missiles will be attracted to this plasma ball instead of the plane. Now, what's interesting is they don't get very specific, obviously, but they say in black and white that these lasers can also produce visible holographic 3D images of, we're assuming other fighter jets, obviously, but essentially anything that they wanted to produce a holographic 3D image of. And again, these lasers can essentially ionize the atmosphere, and they can work on different wavelengths, including visible light. So all these things, I think have to be taken into account when we're talking about something like the Nimitz encounter.
I think so too, and it's been interesting for me since I have such a great archive now to look back, historically at the people that were involved and kind of straddled both worlds, with the collecting UFO information over the decades, working with people in the government or, yada, yada. And it's like, what were they specifically looking for? They were looking for, all of these effects on vehicles, on people, on tissues and different things. And it's like, oh, okay. Now that I'm looking clearly at this, I think that they were really doing all of this as, not in the name of ET. Let me just put it that way. So, very interesting.
No, I mean, absolute agreement. And the videos, themselves, the jets, I believe, are only flying at like 250 knots, and they're supposedly, chasing a 200,000 mile per hour object. And it's just many, many questions, I think, that people need to have, and to remember that everything that we're being told about this event is being filtered through the military or through the government. Literally everything that we're being told. Right. And when you look at an event like Rendlesham, I think we need to be a little leery, or just at least skeptical about the level of belief that we give to these things. And again, I'm not saying it's anything nefarious. At heart, I think everybody thinks that they're a good guy and that they have good intentions. And certainly national security is a paramount one.
Absolutely.
But I think there's something to be said about those Tic Tac events and the way that they're being portrayed to everyone in the country, or anyone paying attention, at least, which is admittedly very small. I think it's funny for people like us that are in this. It's almost hard to believe that most people aren't interested enough to be doing the research that we are. But again, even though I think a lot of people do believe that life may exist outside of this earth, they certainly just are not interested in ufology. And I think I heard Phil Leach say it before. My neighbors, they don't know anything about a UAP. They don't know what that is.
Well, we are a special little group of nerds, aren't we?
We are, and that's okay. But to get back to the Nimitz encounter real quick, it's funny because in fact the pilot that I said that had saw the Tic Tac go underwater and did see a sub-like shape under the surface of the water, and that was cut out of the film since. His last name is Curse, and it's funny, he actually went to work for Robert Bigelow from 2007 to 2013.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it?
Well, just one of many coincidences, I think, that would have to be believed to have faith in the narrative that's trying to be disseminated.
Well, and it's all the same, people. I mean, there might be some fresh faces out there that are, promoting, but when you look behind the scenes, yeah, it's the same people. But hey,
and it's funny that a lot of the same people, although again and again, kind of maybe end up with egg on their face, or at least end up in situations where we should be able to say, okay, I think this person I need to at least look at him skeptically. It's funny that we find them involved in the community again and again, decade after decade. And even, to take it further than that, a lot of the same things that people fell for are being, people are falling for them again every day. There's all kinds of people falling for the alien autopsy film. There's a new one there's new people every day that are falling for that. Something that certainly has been properly debunked, and we know who made it, and we know where they made it and how they did it, and a very well done.
Kit Green fell for it, so hey, why not?
Right. Exactly. And Kit Green certainly stated to us that he believed that it was real. And has since ended up with some egg on his face, but yet he's still very closely attached to the community, and what he says affects the narrative, and he's held up there as someone who should be believed because he is knowledgeable and he is very closely sourced to what's going on. And I think that any person who at least becomes knowledgeable of the history certainly questions something like that. Hal Puthoff is another one. Since the 70s, with SRI, when Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ were, studying whether or not ESP was real. And I think James Randi did a very good job of proving over 4 years that, these people, they let their beliefs spoil the work. And, this is work that was done at Stanford, and it was...
If that's what they were studying, though. I really don't think that's what they were studying.
Very true. And there's certainly something to be said for that. But I think it gives credence, at least, and I won't talk about the entire study, but specifically about the part of the study that James Randi, the amazing Randi, was able to, infiltrate, so to speak, with his ESP guys. I think they've shown very well that they were able to hoax the testing and these scientists over the course of 4 years. And really because these scientists they were kind of working from a belief that they had that this was real. And again, you brought up a very good point. This is if we are to believe the story. But certainly, I think something is to be said for the fact that, even after such an instance, that Hal Puthoff was able to be, successful again and again in the community. And people like him and Russell Targ, are going on the biggest shows of the day and doing TED Talks about, ESP and these tests that they did and how scientific they were and how the government funded them. And a narrative that I argue probably goes against what reality is.
Here's just an interesting thing. There's a book called Virtual Government, CIA Mind Control Operations in America, and it's by Alex Constantine, who is, a very controversial figure. But he dug into some of this stuff and mentions all of these people and got into it. And I definitely think that book might be worth a read for people. and talks about Hans Adams' fascination with UFOs, and then also the MK Ultra, and then the MIT. And not to, those aren't necessarily in order here. I'm just looking at little bits and pieces. But how there was the MIT abductee study that was contracted and bankrolled, and it was to here, this is what he says, to fan a smokescreen for abductions by the mind control underground. And so I definitely give this a read, you guys, and I want to have a dialogue about it in the next few weeks, and let me know what you think, because again, I just don't think that these people, I mean, they've presented a narrative, a very sexy, as you say, kind of that narrative that, oh, ESP, we're empowering ourselves, we can remote view, we're doing all of these things, but then you look at the people that they were running with, or are running with, and what they were doing behind the scenes, like I've mentioned time and time again, Sidney Gottlieb and MK Ultra and all sorts of different things that were taking place. I mean, shouldn't we just maybe kind of put that out there instead of inviting these people to speak at lectures and glorifying some of this stuff?
Absolutely. And that's, I think, been the challenge of good researchers from probably the beginning. I think that the people that got the most attention and the most media coverage, and therefore had the message that reached the most people, have always had an agenda, certainly, and have, I guess, arguably had some type of connection to get that message out there. More so than good researchers to begin with. I think that that certainly profiteering and money has driven a lot of what's happened throughout the history of ufology, mixed in with a little bit of government disinformation for their own purposes. But again, the challenge for good researchers, that's why I really cannot understate the value of a show like yours that really does showcase good, solid researchers. And again, your video stream on YouTube, it's literally just an audio stream. There's no video to it.
I don't need to get on
and
it.
You get more views than a lot of the more mainstream, well-produced stuff that's out there. And I think because it is real research, and it is stuff that's detached from that mainstream narrative that we've all come to distrust for whatever reasons, and whether it be money or government interference or whatever.
Yeah, I know. It's and again, thank you. That means the world to me, because some days you wonder, is anybody paying attention? But I'm glad that people like you and everybody that I get comments from, that they're paying attention, because this is as you know, this is important, and it's not. I'm not going out there to try to burst anybody's bubble unless it deserves to be burst. Just kidding. But I think that this is it's a dangerous thing to play with people's belief systems, and then to use a subject as important as this to insert different ideas that are potentially not in our best interests. And I just that's kind of my cross to bear, I guess, in all of this, is to try to get that information out. And so I appreciate all the things that you've said, because you have the same type of mindset that I do, and I think most of the people that listen to the show. So that's awesome. Thank you.
No, absolutely, and thank you. And I think just as important as your research is the fact that you're willing to share your journey, and the fact that you were so eager to be involved in the ufology community, and you thought, as you say, that it was all light and love, and that things were a certain way, the way that they were presented, and you are very open about the journey that you've had coming to some realizations. And I think that alone can help people to do the same thing, because it's not easy. You don't, especially if you have a belief that may be founded for a good length of time and off of what you certainly thought was good reason. I mean, most of us don't establish beliefs, especially if we're doing this type of research. We don't establish beliefs over frivolous things, and it's hard. It's hard to sometimes step out of those, and certainly hearing your journey, I think can give people the opportunity to see that very smart, very diligent people can be misinformed and can be led astray and can develop beliefs that they may have to look at. And I guess that's really part of life, right? As we develop, we need to always evaluate our standpoints. But certainly, I think that the narrative has been driven to the point where it has been damaging, certainly for those of us that are trying to seek truth, but even just for people's mental or emotional well-being. And, people may not have a right to know about the highest levels of secrecy and intelligence that the military and the government is operating at, but they certainly have the right to not be driven down the road of false belief,
right.
I guess.
Right. That's absolutely spot on, and thank you. That's brilliant. And so I know that we've got, I don't know, I can go over time, whatever I usually do, we just roll with it. But you wanted to ask me some things about Skinwalker, and so I would love to answer, because again, that's just an evolving journey for me. Never a dull moment in that world.
Yes. Yeah, no, I would love to. And of course, I know we have people in chat that probably have a ton of questions for you as well about Skinwalker, and I'm just kind of logging into chat now so I can read people and let them ask their questions too, if they happen to have some good ones that you want to ask. But anyway, one thing I wanted to ask you about Skinwalker, and I remember Chris Marks was on your show, and he was speaking about the new owner, Brandon Fugel. And he was talking about some of the more recent interviews that Brandon has given, and how he's kind of made allusions to the snipe hunt. And Chris said that he was going to, I guess, touch a little more on how he felt on that. And I didn't know if you guys had a chance. I did comb through to see if I had missed it, to see if there were any updates on that.
You know what? And that's a great question. And I think that was a very interesting comment from Brandon about the snipe hunting and how basically, Bigelow put people out there and, put a flour sack over their head and spun them around and said, hey, have at it. What are you gonna tell us you see? So it was like a game. I think that's what kind of Brandon was getting to with his statement. And to be quite honest, now as I look back at things, I think that's exactly what happened. I think that was the people that were out, on the ranch and securing the property and investigating or whatever. I think that they were just put into a little a bubble, and they were, tasked with doing things. But the larger project was going on. Obviously, the classified project was something completely different. So in a sense, I think Brandon, really did hit it on the head, actually. So.
And that's very interesting. Have you? And I think you said that you're working on a book, I believe too. But I know the pandemic's kind of put a lot of things on hold. Has your research on Skinwalker been on hold for the most part for the last year?
Never.
Wonderful.
Oh yeah, no. In fact, I just have more discoveries every day, and it really is quite fascinating to me. And those things will, I'll talk about things as they develop. And the book right now, thank you for bringing that up, but because I wanted to ask everybody out there to send Gordon Lohr your thoughts and prayers. Gordon is in the hospital, and I spoke with him yesterday, and he is not sure if he will be returning back home, and we still have some things to finish up on our book, which I've got the help of an amazing person, and we'll get that out there. But I just want to just put that out there. Gordon is such a dear friend of mine, and I love him very dearly, and I wish I could be there for him and cheer him up. But anyway, I wanted to say that. So the book will come out, and I think the book that I'm working on with Gordon is more of kind of my journey and some of the experiences I've had. But it is not going to be the deep dive expose that I am also working on about the Collins Elite, about about Skinwalker Ranch, about some of these people that we've been influenced by. So that will be coming.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, definitely look forward to that. It's funny. We were talking about the snipe hunt comment from Brendan Fugel, and it's funny because the more time goes on, and again, I've really questioned the narratives that I see, and especially the ones that evolve, but the similarities that tend to come out the more that Skinwalker Ranch is investigated and Rendlesham is investigated. It's funny, the amount of similarities, it's almost creepy.
Yeah. I mean, it is, you're right.
Just as, as far as the experimenting and testing going on under, the military, certainly much more direct, possibly at Rendlesham than in Skinwalker Ranch, but certainly the same style of thing. One thing I did want to ask, I remember that you were supposed to have MJ Benares on. Are you still having him come on? Is that something that's going to happen?
You know what? I will reach out to him again. I did reach out to him, and he was going to come on the show that I had mentioned, and then he apparently had a conflict, and so I've not talked to him again. But we'll see if he will come on. I'll extend the invitation to him again.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm certainly interested to see over time what happens with the debrief. Certainly an interesting prospect. Just kind of interested to see over time how it goes. I think that the recent picture fiasco, the Mylar picture fiasco, triangle UFO picture thing, left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I don't know what that was, but it's, again, a lot of repetitiveness in the UFO community.
Right. Yeah, it's just repackaging the same narrative, I think, a lot of times, obviously. So, and I mean, really the fact that MJ12 keeps coming up again and again, and blah, 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 it's like...
Can you even believe it?
I kind of can, actually.
And again, I think that's why I understand why good researchers do move on, because so much energy goes into doing really good research on things, and unfortunately, they don't reach the masses in the way that the original narrative did.
Well, because they've got a lot more funding.
Yes, they do.
And they can use their little, tactics to employ people that will, or whatever it is, to go in and troll people and discourage good people from doing research. I mean, it takes if you start digging into things that are, even remotely close to being true, then, there's definitely, it's an interesting ride, for sure.
Yes, no doubt that you're finding out firsthand, I'm sure.
Yeah. and I appreciate your questions. I mean, I know that the Skinwalker thing is just so fascinating, and I really appreciate you paying attention to it. Hit me with what else you have? Anything else?
And again, if there's anybody in chat that wants to ask questions about it, please feel free. I don't want to hog the last few minutes here. I know there's probably people that have tons of questions about Skinwalker, and we don't often really get to talk about it because, again, you're usually showcasing other researchers and their work. So I did want to give a chance for all of us to just talk to you about your research for a minute. Now, what do you, as far as the people in the surrounding community, do you find that the narrative is still strong, or do you find that, you know, the type of research that you're doing is kind of caught up, at least in the surrounding area?
You know, it's interesting because I think a majority of the people in the area just don't even care. You know, I mean, it's something that they heard 2 decades ago, and it's like, you know, whatever. I mean, they've got jobs, they've got families, they have to put food on the table. You know, like most people on the planet. You know, all whatever. And I think that, you know, that's you know, that community is you were mentioning the community at large. You know, how most people just don't care about it because it's not, at the end of the day, it's not putting food on the table. But there are people that do get kind of, you know, they're swept up in all of this, and like we did. It's a fascinating story that was created, and people have you know, had their own experiences, whether they're, you know, I mean, whatever that is. At the end of the day, I don't know. I had a very intense experience that was near there. Well, actually, right, I was looking at the ranch when it happened. But, you know, so it's fascinating. But I think that, you know, I think sometimes people get tired of tourists invading their communities and people coming in and leaving, you know, beer cans or, you know, I mean, all sorts of garbage on the periphery. But then again, the powers that be have created this mythical place where, you know, UFOs come in and out of portals, and shape-shifting wildebeests are coming out of here and there, and blah, yada, yada. So, I don't know. I mean, it is interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure, unlike Roswell, the surrounding area hasn't capitalized wholeheartedly on the Skinwalker Ranch. But one thing I wanted to ask you, I know, you know, at least from what I understand, that security has been ramped up around the property. I know, I think they put like fencing up and stuff, and I think it's more secure, at least, than when Bigelow owned it. Is it your understanding that there's anything still going on at the ranch as far as programs or whatever studying going on there?
You know what? I have definitely heard that there's still there are things going on, and there might be a continuation. There is a continuation of what Bigelow was doing. I think it'll be interesting to see what the new, you know, what Brandon and the people that are there now, what research they put forward, because they have said that they would be putting things out and sharing it publicly, which we did hear, you know, from NIDS and other people, and that never happened. But so we hope that does happen. They have, you know, redone the gate, and there is, I mean, I don't know if there's extra security, but they've got shiny new guns. Does that count?
Now, as far as, and you know, you made a good point about NIDS, you know, saying they were going to publicize things. Obviously, they were very closely linked to, you know, the military and some type of funding. Is Brendan Fugel, is he completely private, or does he also have some type of government attachment?
It's a great question. I would think from what he says publicly that he does not have a government connection. Is that the case? I don't know. So yeah, I guess the hope would be that as a private, completely private enterprise, that their search for profit would be to release things publicly. Their avenue to profit, I guess. Interesting. Yeah. It is. It is all very fascinating. And, you know, again, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, you know, certainly from the very beginning or close to it with Bigelow and the Skinwalker Ranch, that sweetheart government funding was really at the core of what was going on. And it sounds, at least like from what we know now, that Brendan Frugal was coming in without, I guess, some of that type of baggage, but only time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. It seems to be, it does seem to be a continuation of bringing in the same people that were steering the Bigelow narrative, which is, that's been kind of a concern for me. And I would love to see more information come out about all of that. But at the end of the day, I do feel that whatever has been going on there is just not the truth. And I have to say, like I've said before, it's like, okay, if there are, UFOs that are coming in and out in these giant, this vortex and all of these things, it's like, why on that little ranch? Why why do the planes fly over it? Why is there
right.
not? Why is the property not completely locked down and not just two guys with their weapons? I mean, it's like, I none of that makes any sense to me if you really analyze things.
Right. If that were really going on, you think that there would be a complete perimeter lockdown with armed guards every 30 feet, keeping people from getting anywhere close to an experience like that. And it's funny because the lack of, I guess, response, it kind of it leaves you wondering. And to bring it back to the Nimitz encounter, kind of the same thing. To think that for 10 days the military was seeing dozens of unidentified craft in the skies of the most protected area of the ocean as far as the military is concerned, and to not have a response, it seems kind of strange, especially considering, I mean, forget about the boats and the jets that are there doing the military games. I understand they don't have any live ammunition, but I mean, you're just minutes of flying time from some of the largest military bases in the country. And to think that there would have been threats for 2 weeks observing these military maneuvers and that they didn't respond to that, it just kind of, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem like the logical progression of what the military response would be to a true threat.
Thank you. Yes. Perfect. Yes. That is absolutely perfect. I agree with you 100%. And I mean, it is all of these things. It's like, if we just sit back and break it down and look at the logic to all of these things, it's like, okay, and again, like I have to stress, it's the same people involved in putting out the narrative time and time again. And what have they shown at the end of the day? They've dangled carrots and then, filled us full of, I mean, some truth and mostly a lot of BS. So.
Yep. Yeah. And more than smoke and mirrors, it tends to just be some bullshit, I find.
Yeah. But, way to start the show with that and end the show with that.
Exactly. But, maybe one more hopeful message, possibly. A lot of these people that have been controlling the narrative and have kind of been running the show for especially the last 40 years are kind of aging out. Certainly people will be taking their place, much of the same ilk, but it kind of makes you wonder that as the narrative is evolving, certainly and going into more of a new direction. And at least for me, it kind of makes me hold my breath for the future to see if maybe they're going to start acting a little, I guess, a little, trying to think of the word, the way you would expect them to act, and not the way that they have been acting. Yes, yeah, with the conscience. And again, I think everybody thinks of themselves as a good guy and think that they certainly have good intentions, and that national security and safety of the nation is probably at the foremost for most of these people. But I think that the narrative has probably gotten a little out of control, and I think that it's certainly evolved to a point that no one who began it could ever possibly imagine it would have. So who knows? Maybe the next generations will show us something that we weren't expecting.
And I love it. And I mean, just thank you for everything. And I want to just say that it is interesting because these people are, getting up there. And but are they grooming people to take their places? It certainly appears that certain journalist is. That's maybe not the best choice of people to pick. Anyway, did I say that out loud?
Well, being a little too hopeful, because certainly seamless transition is a staple in the military. But only time will tell. Like I said, time is certainly one of the greatest assets.
It absolutely is, and it's fascinating. And I think for me that I'm grateful to have all of the archives. The Druffel files and Gordon's files and different. I've had so many people contribute to that. Had I not had that really to sink my teeth into and to learn from all of their work over the decades, then I don't know. I'm just grateful for that. It's such a fun thing. And hopefully if you ever get out to Utah, you can come see the archives when things get back to normal or new normal, whatever.
That would be wonderful. Again, we stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before us, all of us. And certainly any work that can be saved from the clutches of the graveyard that it so often ends up in, it really is. People like you that are archiving the work are such unsung heroes, because as we've seen this year so blatantly, that work is often eaten up, and even very blatantly in some cases.
Yeah, and that is always an interesting thing, and this just means I'm going to have you back on the show, because I'd like to get your opinions on that, and because it's really important. I mean, where is all of that information going? Who's pulling the purse strings, and who is behind the scenes that is writing the narrative and creating a new history that is so far from the truth? Just fascinating.
So many questions that just keep us driving forward in this subject, isn't there?
I love it. But you got to come back in the next month. Let's make that a plan.
Absolutely. It'd be my pleasure.
Thank you so much. And again, tell everybody, and you might have a whole bunch of people emailing you, but one more time, just give out your email so people can get in touch with you, because you have a lot to offer.
Sure. It's UAP or SAP at gmail.com. And again, it's kind of a play on words. Is it a UAP or an SAP? I guess if people can remember that, it at least shows me that they probably have done some research, if they can remember that and know what those 6 letters mean. Because like Phil Leach said, most people, they don't know what UAPs are. They don't know what SAPs are. So I'm certainly interested to hear from anybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I hope that you and your wife have a wonderful weekend.
Sure. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say again, if anybody out there has an information on a sighting from the lower New Jersey area during the spring of '97, I'd love to hear from you, and please email me. That would be great.
Thank you so much. That's awesome, and we'll connect again, because I want to pick your brain about some other things. So thank you. Enjoy your wife, and enjoy, just, I don't know, take a break from UFOs. Go have fun. or or call me.
Absolutely. And stay safe, and looking forward to the spring. I'm sure we all are. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody out there for supporting the show and getting into chat, asking questions. You can go to UFO Classified to become a Patreon and help keep the show on the air. I appreciate all that you do for me and for UFO research and all of this. It's just a trip, and there will be more, just some more interesting stories that will be coming out in the next little bit and things. But you guys all be safe. Make sure if you're listening on Spreaker that you get up to the very top and you hit the like button and share it. And I appreciate all of you. Tracy, thanks for being here. I had lunch with Matt today. That was fun. We'll have to talk. So you guys take care. I love you guys. I will catch you next week. Thank you, Steve. That was a ton of fun. All right, you guys.
So my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it can be used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is, and you just kind of adapt and overcome.
What are you going to do with all this? You can't even take care of your own files and get them put into the current system, but yet you want to go collect other people's things. So what are you going to do with it? Who are you giving all this to?
It just really struck me about how the common thread seemed to be deception, but deception of a human nature. So that's what I started thinking, who would these folks be? I mean, then I started thinking about the intelligence agencies, what role they could play, and what would be their motivations for getting involved in ufology.
I'm not saying that because the gimbal is not a rotating flying saucer, that means that all the UFOs are false. Not at all. All I'm doing is I'm looking at this one case, these individual cases, and seeing if there's an explanation for those. So try to, if I could ask people out there listening, don't think that I'm trying to attack your entire beliefs about these things.
Nice to be in orbit.